It is time, once again, to lock your doors, shut your windows, strap yourself into your favorite comfy chair, and tune out and tune into The Naked Zombie.
Yes, it's time once again to get naked with the zombie. I'm your host, Brad Scott, and you are listening to The Naked Zombie, the best in Australian paranormal pop culture radio show that is heard everywhere. That's right, we are heard in so many places it makes politicians very nervous. Anyway, tonight we are going to be talking to a fantastic group. They are known as the Paramatta Paranormal Society, and it is run by two lovely young couple, which I'm actually looking at right now. We're speaking on Skype, which is Sarah and Michael. Sarah and Michael, thank you for joining me on The Zombie tonight.
Hey, thanks for having us, guys.
Mate, look, it's absolute pleasure's all ours, I would say. Now, Sarah and Michael, the Paramatta Paranormal Society, that's a bit of a mouthful, isn't it, for someone like myself? You got the P's happening there. What was the idea of getting? We're going to go during the show time. We're going to talk about different things and aspects of what you guys have done and the evidence you have found. But what I'm also interested in talking to you guys about is the historic side of what you guys do, because we had a little chat before the show tonight, just so I can get a few points. You're very big on maintaining the history of places, is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. To us, that's a huge thing for our group, and that's our main point of doing this, is helping protect in historical places.
So do you find that this work does take you to different parts of Australia, or is it around that sort of your area itself?
I hope it does one day, because we have a passion for going out and trying to help protect other areas in that.
So which are the main points in the historical side? What do you guys look at when you're going to do investigations, or you come across a certain area or location that you want to know about? What sort of research do you actually physically have to do to get that information?
First, we listen to a lot of the people that's in the local area and that, hear them talk about, what's actually happening, like haunted-wise.
Yes.
Then we go and research at the information center to see what the history is. Mm-hmm. Using that, then we go in and we actually do the paranormal investigation in that.
So you've got basically a set process. So basically, before you do any investigation, this is what you're saying is that you look at the historical side of things first. So
yes.
You're the type of, okay, just a quick question on that. When you go to do, so you only do historical sites, or do you do private investigations as well?
We do private as well.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so you also go in and check the history, whether there's any deaths or is there any suicides?
Well, with the private locations that we do in that, we've came to a thing, just kind of, we're there for the client. Mm-hmm. It's like we have a really hard time finding places that are genuine haunted, going out to private locations. So we're mainly there for the client. We sit there and we talk about, what could be happening at the house. We do look up history and that stuff, and we do treat it with respect in that. But it's totally different than going to an older place where you got a lot more history that you can, go through, and that looking at the all the artifacts that's actually in the building. That So when you're actually there for a client, we're just mainly there to actually see what's actually going on and try to validate that there's nothing wrong with them.
So when you go into places, like, do you ask them, do they have any objects in the house that was attached to the house originally? Was there any sort of trigger objects or certain events were happening around certain items within the house? Because coming from the history side of it, you'd be taking this very much in consideration, wouldn't you? It's more to do with, all right, your house may be a haunting, or this location may have a haunting. What was the scenario that brought that haunting to happen? So do you actually go through and actually ask and view photos?
There's sometimes the people that collect secondhand goods. You'll find out, like, someone goes to, like, Goodwill shops and that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Sorry about that, folks. We actually lost Michael and Sarah there for a minute, because wonderful joy of Skype is a right pain at times. But I have them on their landline now. So, and Michael, you're saying regarding back to the first story, mate?
Yeah, whenever we go into the residential areas that have the secondhand goods and that, we just tell them to kind of be careful of what they bring in, because sometimes that can actually cause paranormal stuff actually happening in the house.
Mm-hmm.
Even family heirlooms, and there's been all kinds of different things like objects and that stuff can be attached to, and that. So we just tell people to watch out for what they're actually bringing in.
So has there been any cases at all that you've been involved with that a certain item, and look, I'm very big on the history side of things, there's a certain item within the house that has produced so much paranormal activity that it's really left like the homeowners or the area not in a good way, if you know what I mean? Has it been that aggressive or that sort of intense?
No. The one that I can share is actually one with the family.
Yep.
My mom had made a box for my father after he had passed away.
Yep.
And the box itself kept opening and closing, and stuff of her items kept getting put into the box. So she had jewelry and stuff that kept getting placed in the box, and she didn't do it.
Wow.
There was another case that someone had found a gun that was in between the walls of the house, and they seemed to have a little bit of activity going on, but it was nothing that actually ran him away from the house. Stuff that normally that you see that really scares people in that, it's more like a poltergeist, and it's my belief that normally you'll have a strong sense of a native attachment, so that can either be Aboriginal or Native American.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you even get, have you guys heard of what's called a double ganger?
Yes, we have actually. A lot of people have experienced that. Would you like to explain to the listeners what it actually is? Like, I can basically say it's you, but it's two of you, if you know what I mean.
So it's when you see yourself. There is a belief that if you do see yourself, that you're going to die.
Awesome. That's not really good to know, is it?
Yeah, but I've not experienced that bit of it, but and I've not really got to see myself out on a case either.
Yep.
But I think that's more a tie-in with the poltergeist activity. You also, with like poltergeist and that, you'll have time. Time can actually change itself, where time will stop. You might see stuff in the future. There's a lot that can go on with poltergeist. It is an intelligent haunt, but it's a haunt that it's not going to ask, like, if you ask it questions like, who are you? It's not going to interact like that. It's totally different. The interaction is it is doing the whole physical time. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to explain this in a way that it's hard to explain.
Oh, look, it is hard to explain. I mean, that's the whole paranormal field in general, isn't it? It's you can explain a certain or circumstance or certain instance a certain way,
yeah.
And some people will understand that, other people's won't, because they physically haven't experienced that, have they?
No, and the scariest thing is, like, one of the reasons that I actually got into the paranormal was because I had a lot of experiences growing up, and I thought there was something wrong with me. Coming out to Australia, having a family that actually talked about a lot of paranormal stuff, and that I actually was kind of blessed to actually be in a family like that now. I've talked to counselors and that, saying if there is anything wrong with me, and then finding out there's not nothing wrong with me. There's a lot of people experiencing, apparitions and that stuff. And actually, a lot of the houses that we had lived in, I was able to get the encouragement to actually look at the history and see that there's actually something going on in the house, and it wasn't me.
So if you find after a certain time, look, you brought up a very valid point there, mate. It's a lot of people out there, and this is what we did on a previous show, was to talk about people's perception and that there is, that they think they're going mad, if you know what I mean. They could be having a poltergeist or a haunting experience and stuff like that, so they go, but they don't see it falling under that category, but they're too embarrassed or too scared or too concerned to actually approach groups like yourselves.
Yeah, and keep on in on the other flip side. There is actually people that are having mental issues.
Oh, of course, and
it's a very hard thing doing what we do, because a lot of people think it's just going out chasing ghosts. When we go to clients and that, we have to look at the whole picture. We have to look at if they got mental health problems and that. How do we approach that? What are we going to do for the client? Like I've been working on a case locally in that there's a woman that actually has mental problems. Mm-hmm. So it's how do we work with people that has problems? Like, do we tell them you need to get help, or
how would you touch on a subject like that? I mean, that's the thing. I've been in the situation myself where I've had, when I was out investigating, it was, I had my occasional ones as well that would pop up every now and then. And it is hard because you can't put them all under the same label, if you know what I mean. It could be anything from, they could be suffering from Asperger's, or I'm saying my son suffers from Asperger's, but I know what he is like. It's that whole thing of how do you take each individual person's capacity who is struggling in that sense, how do you get them to the right help, or they do have a paranormal happening? How do you guys do it? How do you sit down and break it down with people? Because I think a lot of people learn from this.
We really have to listen to what people are saying. A lot of paranormal groups write off drug use straight away, saying that's why that they're experiencing stuff, because it's drug induced. That's not actually true.
No, it's not.
Sometimes using drugs and that can actually open people up to actually having paranormal stuff happen to them. So we got to still investigate, still look professional, and also try to help people as much as we can.
So
the paranormal field is still very open to what it is, what's actually happening. I think a lot of the science has been taken out of it.
Yeah.
And you're basically left with a lot of New Age practice in that, which can be helpful. But I think we need to get back to the roots of what actually parapsychology is, where it came from, and learn how to use that in a modern time.
So do you find when you approach people, or people approach you, you sit down with them, you go through, obviously you sit down, you take notes, and you actually take very much aware of your surroundings. Do you actually, when you're sitting down and looking around, do you look for the obvious signs of they may be into the occult, or they may have something sit in their mantelpiece that's out of place?
An answer, as soon as we go in, we look at how they're interacting with the conversation to see if they're kind of able to communicate, if they got any social anxieties. You're looking, your body is the first tool.
Yep. The gut feeling.
Honestly, the body that you have is the first paranormal tool that you need to use. You'll get a feeling. That feeling you need to kind of go off from your gut instinct a little bit. So when we're talking to a client, we're asking them, what's actually happening. If they're saying that they're seeing shadows and that, we say, when do you see them? What was you doing during that time that you seen them? So you have to dig more than just basic questions. You need to, are you stressful right now? Are you going through a divorce? Has there been a death in the family? So there's a lot of questions that you need to ask them. It's not just come in, turn on equipment, and start chasing around in the dark in someone's house. Now, if someone does have mental problems, you go and start chasing stuff in their house. That can actually flare them up more. So you just got to be really careful what you're doing.
Yeah, you sort of can't go in there guns blazing, can you? And say,
and that's why I like. I don't say that I don't like doing residential cases. We're there mainly for the client.
Yeah.
We don't look at that as a paranormal investigation. We look at that as going out as an outreach to actually help somebody.
You're surprising too, because I notice, when I myself, and you've obviously experienced this as well, 9 times out of 10 they just want to have a chat with someone who's not going to make a laughing stock out of them.
Absolutely.
And then do you think there are a lot of groups actually everyone expects to go in, and when you go an investigation to find a paranormal experience, you think as investigators, and I like to ask this question a lot, do you think as investigators we need to actually start taking a step back and actually look at Well, maybe they may not have a ghost, but they probably just want someone to tell their experiences to. You think?
Yeah, that's sort of what's happening with this woman that I'm talking to, yeah.
Yeah, they're going in with all your equipment and everything, this and that. And you find, do you guys use a lot of equipment, or do you find you sort of stick to the very much sort of the basics to start with, like when you first go in there and you do the pre-investigation?
So when we first go in that, it's mainly meet and greet.
Yep.
After that, we get a game plan of what we're going to do.
Yep.
Then we recontact the client and actually go through and just say, this is what we'd like to do. What is your outcome that you'd like to have?
Very good.
So we try to keep them involved as much as possible with a private location. Because
I had a phone call a little while ago from a gentleman who got a paranormal group involved on a certain investigation. Now, they never got back to him afterwards, so they come in, did the investigation. What is your guys' process? And this is very important for other groups, because people realise that once you're invited into someone's home, there's always something's got to happen afterwards. Something's got to happen after, even if you found nothing or not. Do you guys have that ongoing clientele basis, like you just ring them a check on them or something?
We've made maybe 12 visits, at least 12 visits to each client's house before we can actually say that we don't even say that it's done. We try to, investigations seem to just happen one night.
Yep.
You can't do that.
No.
There's, like, you watch the TV shows, and people have said this multiple times, even watching the TV shows, and what happens if they go back? They should go back more often. We're all saying that. Why don't we do it? So it's kind of, we need to have that practice of staying in contact with our clients that we have, checking on them, because with mental problems, with paranormal activity, like with both of these, you need to look at it over a larger period of time. The data that's actually being collected, it's not just a 24-hour research. It needs to be ongoing.
That's excellent. Now, so the whole format for you guys, so that's the private side of things. So you pretty much got that covered. But what we really want to talk about tonight, I mean, we had to touch on that. With every group, we always touch on that. But it's more the history side of things. Because sounds like, mate, you're a huge history buff. And
I love Australian history.
You love Australian history. Being American, as you are, and living in Australia, do you find there's much variation between the two? Look, even though America is older technically in a lot of aspects to what Australia is in European standards, do you guys find a vast difference between the two countries in the way history is done here and that?
One of the things that I can say is that in the States, the history is not really alive no more. It's being tore down. People have lost any connections to the roots. Out here in Australia, I will say the new generation of younger people, it's here, they're kind of starting to lose it, which is really sad.
Yep.
The paranormal is a great way to get younger people involved in the history. I think this is what we're actually needing to do. It's also, Australia's got its history. It's so crazy that it's hard to fathom what actually happened out here. It's, with the convicts, the Aboriginal tie-in, it's a really hard history. And
it's very brutal, isn't it? It's considering that, they used to have, especially with our Indigenous Australians, they used to shrink the population, as it were. I'm using that. I mean, that's what our history was like. We had a mass ships of convicts come over, but we had also the other side of the coin as well, with all the free people that made the choice to come over to Australia. And what they brought, because we're such nowadays, compared to when the white Australian policy was in and stuff like this, was back in the 50s, I think it was, where they only wanted well-educated white people coming in the country.
But even them people that came in here that were wealthy in that, when they came out here, they really still had it hard too.
Of course they did.
They didn't have the resources in that like England had. So coming out to Australia where farming and that was just starting Paramatta, one of the things that we found out is one of the houses here, one of the guys that lived in it was the first person in Australia to actually grow grain.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, that's interesting, though, isn't it? They actually decided we're going to grow grain here, that they wouldn't even know if our temperament and climate would work.
Yeah, so it was pretty rough. Australia, it's basically built on sandstone. It's not a fertile soil in that.
Yeah. Well, it's a lot of red soil and stuff like that as well.
So if you came out here and you had all your knowledge based on a different type of environment of growing, and then coming out here, you would have been very struggling. Like, it would have been bad.
No, it would have been. And this is interesting, and this is what... See, I guess a lot of with the young, new generation coming into the field nowadays, it's sort of, they miss those. They miss a lot of that because it's all about the ghost hunt. It's not about the actual, okay, well, let's take a step back and let's look why these events could be happening. Why are we in a situation where this person or this premise is haunted? Why is it haunted? Yeah, or why is it showing paranormal activity? Why is it doing this? Instead of thinking back, they're just guns blazing, if you know what I mean. And once you know the history, that's more of a tool, isn't it?
Yeah, and Australia history on top of that, like, I don't care who you are, you're going to get sucked into it. I was from the States. I've struggled reading and writing and that growing up. As soon as I came to Australia, the history has honestly just submerged me, man. It's absolutely amazing.
Because, I mean, Australia's, and look, I'm a big pro supporter of Australians and the paranormal. I've always said that, and that's why I like to interview a lot of groups, is because we can learn so much from each other. If one group investigates a certain place and another group joins in or something like that, and they know a little bit more or they want to learn more about the history of the location, it's a win-win, isn't it?
Yep.
It's
I
simple.
think the more that you know, the better that you're going to be at solving problems when you go out.
Yeah.
But also being able to give clients a better answer.
So do you go through the
historical places?
Yep.
The more that you know, the easier it's going to be to help protect that place.
Okay, so speaking about that side of things now, we've got about 10 minutes before we come to our first break tonight. Time flies, doesn't it, when you're talking about this stuff? It just goes.
It's a good conversation tonight, by the way.
Hey?
It's a good conversation tonight, by the way.
Yeah, it is. Look, that's what I mean. It's every interview is a bit different. You know what I mean? In certain points you've got to get across. Now, before we come up to the half-hour break tonight, what locations that you have investigated that have shown to be, the history is just mind-blowing, like, because if you're overseas and you listen to the show, and we do have a lot of overseas listeners, is that, basically in a nutshell, Australia was a penal colony when it first came to be, when it was first founded, when they built everything, so we had a lot of convicts come over. Not all those convicts were what you call evil. A lot of them were even children that stole food. Yeah, children as well stole food just to survive, and basically they threw them in irons and threw them on a boat and sent them over here without their families. So you can imagine the emotional side of some of these places that the convicts built. They weren't all murderers and rapists and thieves and all the rest of it. Some were just people who were in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yeah. And people were just hungry. One stole the hat, and another one stole the loaf of bread.
And that was their way of saying, well, we don't want you here anymore. And so they, I think it was called New England, and that's what became Australia. It was that whole scenario of, well, here we go. We've got a bunch of people here, women, children, men, adults. But you imagine being a kid, right, 7, 8 years of age and younger, being thrown into a boat with hardened criminals.
And it's a life sentence. When they put you on that boat, it was a life sentence.
And 90% of them, and a lot didn't make the trip.
See, like, death row and that stuff would be scary because you know your outcome. For these people that were on the boats, they didn't know their outcome because they were the first ones here. They didn't know what the outcome was going to be. They didn't know when the boat's doors had opened to let them out what was actually going to be here.
Well, Australia really wasn't that well known back then, was it? And that's only a couple of 100 years ago. So you can look at the fact of what it was then, where we are today. And we've got this great cultural heritage, and now we're very much a multicultural society. Australia is just huge multicultural-wise.
Yeah, and that's the thing. The last 40 years, you'll see a lot of people's families that had started here. So the immigration side of this stuff, and I'm one of them, it's still happening today. This is a huge migrating area.
It's a big melting pot, which is awesome. I'm sorry, I'm very pro... because my background's Irish, so we came over here for that reason to find a new country, find a new land, if you know what I mean, make a new start history-wise in our family.
Yeah, it would have been bad for the Irish coming out.
Oh yes, it was. Yes, when we got tired of blowing each other, we come over here to start fights.
During the time that when the Irish were migrating out here, they were pretty much the hated people.
Oh, they were. First, it was when a lot of the Chinese labourers came over here to work in the gold mines. They were pretty much targeted, and a lot of brutal things happened. And this is what people don't realise. When you go and investigate in places like this, you're not just asking questions when you do EVP sessions in English. You may have to look at Mandarin or Chinese.
Yeah, we play the Lord's Prayer in Gaelic at St. Patrick's.
Yep.
And we get a response every time.
I think
Gaelic kind of, if someone doesn't know this, is Irish, but it's like an older Irish way of talking.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's very hard to understand.
It's actually really
around.
cool to listen to, because you wouldn't even think that that's actually Irish.
No.
When you hear it, so if you've never actually heard Gaelic, to actually probably look it up.
No, it's in a touch of Welsh in there as well.
Yep.
Yep. Oh yeah. That's. I remember my coming Irish background. I remember I think it was my grandfather. We used to talk it because his father was that. He spoke it. You know what I mean? And you remember as a kid hearing bits of every now he'd stuff up and speak a bit of Welsh and Gaelic, if you know what I mean. And I'd look at my dad and go, "What's he doing?" Yeah. I mean, this is the weird thing about it, isn't it? It's when you go and investigate in this country, don't expect it just to be all "G'day, mate" and all the rest of it. It
ain't going to happen like it, because I'm telling you, the history. Once you know the history and know, you're going to approach it a lot different.
Yeah.
You in most cases, you actually feel bad.
Yeah, you feel like you're approaching, don't you?
And that, like, people say, "I'll go to quarantine." I've never been to quarantine station. The whole concept of it, I feel bad about it.
Don't they do tours there?
Yeah, I think they still do.
Yeah.
So do they still do tours at the quarantine station?
Yeah, because I remember a mate of mine went, I'd love to get there myself one day and just check it out. But as an investigator, no. There's certain places that I'd feel a bit weird going to investigate, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It's probably do with the history. And even though some people think, "Oh no, that'd be really cool," but you then think, "Hey, you're sort of treading on sacred ground, as it were. You're sort of encroaching."
I used to do a lot of taunting in that, but sometimes I've bitten off more than I can chew by taunting, so I don't really taunt no more. I've had apparitions come up to me and have yelled at me. I've actually seen them.
Yeah, really.
The most hardest one is at All Saints in Paramatta. I had an apparition actually interact with me, and I didn't know at the time the history of the place. But as I was walking away from the group, I was just trying to get one last EVP, and it was a full moon out, so everything had this kind of illuminated edge to it. And you know how, like, if you're at night and your eyes are trying to focus on something, it'll start to slowly kind of come into focus?
Yep.
I seen a woman standing about 100 feet out in front of me, and she was walking, and all of a sudden she stopped and looked at me, and she just screamed out, "Help me, why don't you help me?"
Wow.
This woman had no hair. She was absolutely naked. And right when I seen it, like, my first reaction was run. Like, I couldn't even, like, my teeth were chattering, my eyes were watering, like, because this was, like, the most scariest thing that I've seen then. And I bolted. Well, when I got back to the car, they said, "We heard that." But they didn't see it, because I was too far away from them.
Yeah, but they actually heard it, so it was a VP.
They heard it, we got it on EVP, but I seen it. And she interacted with me. And I found out, like, the reason that her head was shaved, is because there's like 1,500 unmarked asylum graves in Fennell Street, where All Saints is.
Okay, is that where they did a lot of the just the lobotomies and?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's probably
so
why head was shaved. Yeah, and they
and
tended
keep in mind that Australia would have been probably more on the sides of criminal institution as well.
Yeah.
So it's not just like mental health. So they looked at them all as criminals.
Well, and that's the thing. They used to throw them all in the same tent, as it were.
Yeah, like that. It was all in the same category. Like if you just had a normal mental health problem, like what we know as, today, like if you had schizophrenia
or something like that, or yeah,
they would just chuck you in as being a criminal.
And a lot of that because
it was demon possession, and it would have just been bad.
Man, you imagine, look, they only gave up, I think it was, see, I love my history as well, they only really gave up doing like lobotomies and shock treatment back in the 60s.
Yeah.
Well, even actually later than the 60s. I still do some very rare but still recorded cases of shock treatment, especially.
Has a really dark past with that stuff.
Yeah, they won't bring it out to light, will they?
There was a hospital that they actually closed down. I can't... Sarah, do you remember the name of that hospital that they closed down? They had all the mental health patients in the States. What the name of that one was? I can't remember the name of it, but it was really bad. They were pulling people's teeth out that were biting people. Mm-hmm. Like I've worked in group homes, and there is clients that will bite you, but they don't know no better. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So to stop this, they just pulled their teeth out. And they did it with no anesthetic.
No, they just literally grabbed a pair of multi-grips and just went for town on it.
They got the chair still there. It's got their fingernails gripped into the chair.
Yeah. Remember, these people were strapped in as well. They weren't just sitting there comfortably. They were physically restrained. And they actually had specialised utensils that used to hold their drawers open.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is all really gruesome stuff, but people are listening. This is part of our history. This is part of what we do when we go and investigate. We track this information down. So you think about it this way. Before we just go to a quick break, I'll just give you something to think about. Next time you walk in a place like this and you go and investigate, think what they went through. Think how it affected them in their last dying days in this place. And how would you want to be treated? And I'm a big fan of show a little love, if you know what I mean. Show a bit of kindness, show a bit of gratitude in some ways. Well, we are joined by a very exceptional team, Micheal and Sarah from Paramatta Paranormal Society, who is just wonderful, wonderful tonight. Getting a lot of great stuff in here. So we're going to have a quick break right now. We'll be back after these short few messages.
I'll get it. Dude, dig the zombie motif. Dude, you're going to the 2012 zombie walk. We're here in Brisbane, and in aid of the Brain Foundation of Australia. Dude, I'm there. By the way, can you stop chewing on me now? Sorry.
That's right, Zombie and Zombettes, the 2012 Brisbane Zombie Walk in aid of the Brown Foundation of Australia. Come and join us on the 21st of October 2012 at Victoria Park for a fun-filled day of fun and excitement in scaring the locals. For more details, go to www.brisbanezombiewalk.com.
Are you looking for some really good equipment in your next ghost hunt? Then look no further than the Ghost Shack, based right here in Australia. The Ghost Shack can offer you everything from the millimeter, EMF detectors, cameras, illuminator, brackets, spirit box, and of course voice recorders. All you got to do is go to Facebook and type in Ghost Shack for all your paranormal needs. And we are back. I am Brad Scholes, the host of The Naked Zombie, and tonight I am joined by Paramatta Paranormal Society. We're having a great chat to Micheal and Sarah, who have actually had this team for the last 2 years. Now, before we go any further there, Micheal, why don't we give Paramatta Paranormal a bit of a plug? Now, how can people find you guys?
Our Facebook right now is the best source to get us on, so just get on Facebook. and look up Paramatta Paranormal Society.
And does it come under the PPS as well, or is it just the Paranormal
We
Society?
just abbreviate it for PPS because it is a bit of a mouthful.
Well, what I'll do is I'll actually put a link on the website tonight. So people, if you listen to the show and you want to check them out, you'll find it there under their interview tonight on the Naked Zombie. So people click on that, go and check it out. They've got some wonderful stuff on there. I'm very impressed.
You'll be able to look at our YouTube videos too. And
yes, YouTube videos. I was about
I'm
to mention
just starting to make the YouTube videos, so they're not the best.
Mate, look, I much seriously, and I think a lot of people might agree with me on this. I'd much rather look at a 5-minute friggin' YouTube video of a team getting out there and showing the nuts and bolts of something than sitting down watching an hour show where I just go, oh, it's the same.
I'm like that.
It's the same. It's the same. Oh, okay. Really? It's the same.
There's a really funny video kind of floating around on the internet, and it was saying, what happened to the olden time parapsychologist.
Yeah.
And it shows how it's changed.
Yeah.
So now it's got, the more modern ghost hunter and that, and it's just a really funny looking picture.
Oh, it's just some really good people, some very clever people out there in this field. Anyway, we are talking about the history side of the paranormal, especially in Australia, and this is what Micheal specialises in. This is what Paramatta Paranormal do. They love the history. They will go out there, and if you know of somewhere that may be under threat of being demolished or something like that, you guys will basically go in there swinging, won't you, to try and preserve
absolutely.
it.
We'll write petitions and that. We'll get the local council involved and wanting to know what's going on with development. Why is it not being protected?
Yep.
We'll ask to look at the development plans for it.
And
if it's registered underneath the historical society,
the historical
we'll get them
society.
involved. If it's not been listed, we'll ask why it's not been listed.
Yep.
So we're
a
little bit picky about that because coming back from the States where stuff is not really being protected, it's just getting demolished.
Yeah.
We don't need that out here. There's so much cool artifacts in Australia.
Yep.
And we need to keep in mind that we've lost 80% of them.
Yeah.
So we've only got 20% left. And still to this day, they're still trying to take it away from us. And that's, this could be a real estate company doing this. This could be like a lot of the old graveyards that are in Australia.
Yeah,
the ones in Paramatta are the oldest graveyards. They're wanting to cut them back. They're wanting to relocate them in the park.
Yep.
That's not where they were at. That's not where they were built.
No.
Why does that need to be like that? So we try to make sure that nothing's happening.
I mean, we need, and this is where we need the general public support as well. I mean, if you guys out there listening to the show, and especially in Australia, if you know of anyone out there who is going to do the dirty, as it were, and is going to get something happening, even if you hear a whisper about something, that a great location or something's going to be moved that shouldn't be moved. Look, I understand progress, I really do. That's how we move ahead. But let's also think about what we have in the past. Because we got in this investigation side of that because of what the past brings us today. In a nutshell, that's what it is. We're looking for stuff that happened in the past. And where do you get that from? You get that information from history. And it's so important that any paranormal investigator, I don't care where you're from or where you live or what you do, if you don't know your history or the location you're investigating, you may as well just be packing up, going home and taking up a new hobby.
Because you're not going to know what you're actually going
No, you're not going to know what you're looking for.
How to actually use the tools that you've got to be able to capture any of the evidence. Just for instance, I was saying before you went on break, if we don't know what's actually at a location, how are we expected to actually get a response?
That's right.
So if you go to a location, you don't know the history of it, how are you going to, one, put up any type of hot places that's in that location if you don't know about any of the events? So if you're only going by what someone's told you, like a personal experience, it's not going to validate anything that's actually happened at that location.
No.
And that's a fact. Like, that's not just a investigator's 101. That's a fact.
That is a fact. And we're going to take a step back with this, with Micheal, because you look at from the day the first ships come over. Well, I'm talking European standards at this stage. We'll talk about the indigenous side in a minute. We've got we'll do that now. Actually, we got 40,000 years of indigenous heritage sitting there.
Yeah, and Paramatta alone, Paramatta, the Barramundi tribe.
Yeah.
No, what's it called? Paramatta tribe that lived in Paramatta was there for over 40,000 years.
I mean, this is phenomenal. I mean, we have such... I mean, people only look at the European side of it because of the buildings and structures, but what about the land?
There's scarred trees. There's what's called scarred trees where they've marked the trees with either a sharp tool, and that's where they used to put their dead at. Mm-hmm. These trees are still going around. You can actually come across these trees.
Yeah, I mean, they're a bit rare nowadays, but these are not sort of the areas I'd personally investigate, but only because, to me, it's a bit... I don't know. What's the best way to put it? I feel I wouldn't be doing it justice.
Yeah.
That's why I tend to stick to the European side of things, because I know that myself.
And that's fine, because being like that, because we don't know that side of stuff, because Aboriginals, they're really in tune with the earth more than what we'll ever be.
Oh, definitely with the dream time and the history.
And they've got ways of being able to use their mind and their body in the way that we can't do that. So why go out and even begin to even investigate something we have no idea even about it?
And look, I've known of people who have gone out trying to investigate places like that, and they do not come back the same. Because there's a story. Have you heard the story about the Black Stones? Yes, bits of it. It does ring a bell, but you'd like to... Well, tell me more about it and tell our listeners.
So there was a tour guide that was going out here, so a tour, and some people on this bus decided to take these black stones that they'd found.
Oh.
Well, when they came back through all the parts of the world, they started having all these problems in their house, more like poltergeist stuff, like what I was talking about before. Mm-hmm. Well, they all get in contact with each other and decide to return these rocks, because it only happened, all these events started happening after they brought them home. But once they returned the rocks, everything was fine. And that's the whole indigenous side of the paranormal. We shouldn't muck with things that we don't know what it is. They can be like we were talking about connections to secondhand goods. It's even different than that. They have a connection to the earth itself, to the trees. Right.
We're talking ancient. We're talking stuff like that is just...
an older type of older... what's the way to put it? Ownership over the land and that.
Yeah. I mean, and unfortunately, our past history hasn't been rosy, like most countries, but you look from the time we were actually... we come to be, Australia was actually settled. We had our indigenous population just hunt down. Yep. We had the stolen generation that, seriously, I'm 40, and this was still going on when I was a kid in the early 70s, where these families were broken up.
Australia's not had a day of rest for a long time.
No, it hasn't, and
literally.
It hasn't, and that's
even
why it's so
active. Now, it's still going. It's still a pretty active history.
It is. It's still continuing to grow, and now we have a lot of new people coming into the country, and they're bringing their own beliefs and their own religions and stuff like that. And so that's what I mean. We've just got to start looking at it slightly differently. We got to start dealing the whole paranormal. The cultural changes, even though if it's 10 years ago, but remember, this all started happening a lot longer before that. We were colonised by different races, different groups, well before we were around. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We've got to start looking at that.
And the great thing, with us having all this history, we're in a great state of being able to collect probably some of the best paranormal evidence in the world.
Hell yeah, I agree with that. And
there's multiple layers of stuff that's gone on in Australia that's caused different types of energy fingerprinting.
Yep.
To happen. With the sandstone being underneath Australia, that's basically a magnet to suck in energy. And I don't know if a lot of people know that listening. But with sandstone, it's kind of like a tape player. Sometimes it can just play back what it's absorbed.
There's a lot of energy involved around that. There's a lot of information that's stored. in that sandstone. I mean, look, we are sitting on basically, I think it's 2 tectonic plates, and it was originally thought only to be 1, but I'm pretty sure there's 2. I'm thinking back to my education standards now.
I think there is 2.
Yeah, I think there's 2 tectonic plates. But even because we have a lot of underground streams, a lot of underground water here in Australia, a lot of bores, a lot of this stuff carries this information. And I'm calling it information because you got to look past what's on top and look what's below to find out whether these events are triggered by that as well. I mean, I'm making it sound like it's really hard, but it's not. It's just a bit of common sense to go and look where the situation's based, look where the building is based. Does it lie on landlines, ley lines, sorry, and all this other type of stuff? How does that affect us? Because being Irish, we believe in the wee folk and stuff like that, and that's what we were brought up to understand and stuff. And so you don't build places and houses in certain areas and stuff like that.
And there's a lot of cultures like that.
There's a lot of cultures like that. You know what I mean?
They tell you to do it a certain way. There's every culture that I know that I can think of, there's different ways that they tell you to do things.
Yeah.
And that's just something that we need to think about. Why are they saying that to us? Is there some sort of warning, or is it trying to say, look, if you do it this way, some bad stuff's going to happen to you?
But you know why they tell us this? Because of history.
There you go.
In a nutshell, it is. It's history. And that's why I really love discussing this, Michael, because the paranormal to me is such a fundamental existence for myself personally. I love it. I've been doing it a long time. I've always been fascinated about it. But I think it's time also, especially with the younger generation coming into the field now, instead of Googling everything, pick up a book. Pick up something from Hans Holzer.
It won't hurt you.
It won't hurt you because you're surprised.
And especially for me, coming from a place back at home where I couldn't hardly read and write, and then coming out here and then reading my first book and just being stuck into it, man. I absolutely love it. Mm. There's no excuse for out here.
No. See, look, the TV shows are great, but they're all based overseas. That's the thing. They're not based here in Australia. They're not Australian culture. They're not our understanding of how the way things you would know, coming from America yourself. The 2 standards difference of investigating. As say, an Americanised way of investigating, is it any different from Australia's way of doing it, like an Aussie investigation team, or is it becoming now where just because of all the TV and media and stuff, we just all become blurred into one?
I think that's the sad point of it. Mm. I think the States is a huge influence on Australia, even outside the paranormal. So Australia kind of strives to be like the American entertainment. You can see this in the fast food, like literally. We're so Americanized out here. It's not even funny.
New Zealand, when I was there for 3 years, what you call Hungry Jack's here was called Burger King over there, and it was the same thing. I mean, I said, oh, well, Burger King. I went in there and went, it's Hungry Jack's.
When I came out from the States, I was under the impression this place was going to be a desert when I came out. Yeah. I was already shocked. Because of, Steve Irwin.
Oh, yeah, look, that man...
I thought I was going to the desert, and it's totally not the desert, man.
No, I mean, but just on Steve Irwin, I mean, that bloke did so much for this country.
So how we look and see America, America looks and sees us totally different, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing, isn't it? But it's always good really to speak to someone who's had that experience. See, I investigated for 3 years in New Zealand, but I'm Australian, and the way the things were done there were different to what I do here. But I learnt something from doing it over there. And I still use some of those practices today. And you do learn it, but you've got to remember where you are. You're not. If you're an Australian investigator, you've got to remember, you may have watched all the TV shows and all the rest of it and listened to radio shows like mine, I guess. But you've got to remember that, you've got to remember where you are. If you're in the States, fair enough, you're in the States, you investigate your history, your side of things, you research what you're looking back. If you're in Canada, if you're in India, if you're in China, doesn't matter where you are, you've got your own way of doing things, how cultural you are doing things. Australia has a very violent past, a very past that was buried a lot of it was buried, you know what I mean, because a lot of people didn't want to know. But I'm glad to see, because of technology, which has benefited us at the same time, is starting to bring that up out into the open for others to do it and to understand. What are your thoughts on that?
I think there is a lot of, and changing something. One of the things I do kind of feel bad for, but I'll have to say, you know, coming out here and me being American and me being really into wanting to protect the history, I think that there should be some more local people here wanting to do it.
Mm-hmm. No, look, fair call, mate. Look, this is the thing. Your point of view is valid to everyone else's who comes on the show. And
you know, whenever I came out here and I seen the gyms that are laying around, you know, these buildings, like, if we let them go, you're never going to see them again.
No.
And you know, even the brickwork. And this is the thing. This is one of the things that I'll never forget. I was on a tour. And this woman that was doing this tour, she said, you know, the brickwork on this building tells a story. And I'm thinking, how does that happen? Each convict signed his signature, not like a hand signature, but a certain type of way that he carved that stone. So sometimes the cut marks will be at an angle, or sometimes they'll be straight across. So each convict signed a stone.
My uncle's got that in his house, actually. He's got a 2-story house, and when he built it, I remember as a kid, he had this weird-looking stone right in the middle of the wall. It was actually carved by a convict. You know what I mean? So I know what you're talking about, as I've actually seen these myself. And to think someone actually sat there for hours on end just chipping away at this thing for it to be immortalised, you know, and in history and time.
Yeah. Paramatta, I will have to say this, Paramatta being one of the oldest settlements, being to be close to that, it's actually really cool to be able to actually, because like there's some places that you can actually still step back in the past and look around and have that experience. Like I've been very grateful for that.
So we've got about 10 minutes to go on the show tonight, mate. It's just flown, and I'm just amazed by this interview. It's just been fantastic. All my guests have been fantastic, but the history, I love history. Now, have you got any, and I'm sure people are going, but where are the ghost stories? People want to hear ghost stories. Mate, you spoke about the lady before who was, you know, nude as and shaved head and all the rest of them was screaming, help me at you. Have you ever had other experiences like that while out investigating?
Oh, yeah, there's heaps.
Give us some. Just bring them all away.
Same location. There's one pilot that's buried in All Saints. Mm-hmm. When we go out there, and it's a dark night, but you can look up and you can see the stars. There's no clouds. And you can hear a old propeller plane droning overhead. It sounds like it's right on top of you. Mm-hmm. And it's to the point that dogs are literally barking. And no one actually sees anything. We've seen a helicopter at the same level come over, and we've seen the helicopter.
Really?
So that's another incident. Another that we've got was I had the headphones in one night, and I actually felt the compression off from the voice and actually felt the breath as the words were being made. I had some person yell at the side of my face, like, get behind the tree. It was like, behind a tree. So we've had some experience. That's all been at All Saints.
So it was one of the
St. Patrick's. Yeah. There's a mausoleum that we found newspaper articles on that satanic rituals that happened in, and we've had heaps of experiences in that chapel. We've had people that do not believe in ghosts absolutely run out of that graveyard. And yes, funny, that alone, to me, is just saying there's something definitely going on. The graveyards in Paramatta, I will say, are all active. There's no doubting it. There's way too much consistency. Way too much matching up with history. The psychics. That's one of the things like I really have not talked about tonight.
No, but please go ahead.
Psychics in that. I'll tell you guys a little secret that I've done to help kind of validate with the psychic what's going on, and a lot of people don't talk about this. Is the psychic's telling I'm hearing, seeing stuff, right? But keep an eye on how they're actually looking around. Sometimes a psychic will forget to tell you things.
Yep.
So, like, our psychics don't know the locations that we take them to. So when we use a psychic, we never tell them. So we get them to meet us at a point, and then we take them to the place.
Mm-hmm.
At St. Patrick's Cemetery, we had the psychic come out. Straight away, she wanted to go away from the chapel. She didn't want to go there. I'd try to say, "Oh, are you sensing anything over here?" And she would just kind of look off over in that distance, and I could tell that she didn't want to go over there.
Mm-hmm.
But at first, she didn't really say nothing, you know what I mean?
Just very quiet and nonchalant.
And then finally we took her over there, and right we took her there, she says, "I feel something bad is going to happen." As soon as she said that, there was a loud slap right on the wall. It was like someone almost like literally just as hard as you could slapped a hand and just cupped it right on the wall.
Really? Geez, that would have put the wind up anyone, mate. Seriously, stuff like that does. I mean, no, we go out looking for it, but you're never quite ready for it, are you?
No.
that's the joy of it. You're never quite ready for it when it does happen. Listen, mate, I cannot thank you enough, Michael, and of course Sarah in the background. Sarah, thank you for joining us tonight on the Naked Zombie. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. And
thanks for having us, mate.
No, just stay on the line there for a while longer. Listen, and don't forget, folks, please jump across to on Facebook page, type in Paramatta Paranormal Society. Go ahead, click that likey button, because show some history here. Show some history for these people who they've put a lot of work in.
It'll help support us too by help pushing us too, because we want to actually be able to by liking us, it's actually showing us that you guys are really wanting to keep the history alive.
Oh, definitely.
Our slogan is, we don't just chase the dead, we keep our history alive, and I think that's what we all need to do.
I agree with you 110% on that, Michael. I really do. Anyway, folks, we have come to the end of tonight's show, which is a shame, but I've got to keep it sort of the same. But don't forget, tomorrow night, if you listen to this, we actually have the Naked Debate, which is the panel side of things, which is a 2-hour show that will be touching base on all the good stuff in the paranormal that's come through. So again, please thank you, and my Naked Zombie listeners there, please thank the Paramatta Paranormal Society, Michael and Sarah, for joining me tonight on the show. And thanks, it was great having you, mate, and I hope you got your points across as well.
Thanks for having us on tonight, mate.
No, thank you for being on the show, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure. And don't forget, guys, you're listening to the best in Australian paranormal pop culture radio show, The Naked Zombie, and I will speak to you all next time.